Alice is a global strategist, a brand builder, communication specialist, and a talent agent.
At the end of the day, if your followers and your fans and the consumers are the ones buying it, it makes sense for them to have a say in how the product should be developed.
We've done quite a bit of workshop for developing new brands where we actually invite influencers to be part of the conversation and be not just the face of the brand here.
The creative economy has, transformed the way, brands engaging with influencers, but also it's transforming how influencers are now, having much more opportunity to monetize through creation of their own brand or co-creating products with brands.
I think if you're not doing influencer marketing, you really should probably consider it because it clearly does work and it really is the future.
Hi everyone, here is Maira Genovese. I'm the founder and president of ACP, a fully integrated market agency powerhouse. We are based in London and this is our Influencer Marketing Uncover podcast. Welcome and thank you so much for being with us. Today is a real pleasure to have Alison Hampton joining us directly from California. Alice is a global strategist, a brand builder, communication specialist, and a talent agent. After integrating the direction of many important brands across different markets, she now runs her own company, ACP Management, a full-service talent agency specialized in entertainment, fashion, beauty, luxury, and lifestyle. And with me today, I have the pleasure to have Raphael as my co-host. Raphael is our managing director in US, and then he's joining us directly from New York. Hi, Rafa. Good morning or good afternoon?
Good morning, good afternoon, we're international. Thank you so much for having me on such a special episode. Our guest is a global and PR strategy mind. She's lived all over the world, from Sydney to London to New York, Chicago, and now California. She has held senior roles at Australia, worked with Clinique, Estée Lauder. She was most recently VP of Global Communication at Bare Minerals and Shiseido. I know that because that's where I got the chance to get to know her and work with her on large influencer and celebrity programs, hosting events and shoots around the world in LA, New York, the UK, and Tokyo. So we'll spare you for today the stories of our shoot in Tokyo, but I promise they're good ones. Since we worked together, Alice had made the jump, and I'm so proud of her for opening her own business and kind of putting the personal touch that she has working with top tier celebrity and talent mixed with her experience working with brands and has created her own company. So I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more about that. But I'm excited to start this conversation, diving into kind of the power of co-creation, collaboration between brands and influencers. So such a pleasure, Alice. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you both for having me. It's such an honor to be on your podcast. And obviously, Raph, I adore you. We've had many stories over the years, but I always loved working with you, and I'm just so happy for your continued success and your role at MG Empower. So congratulations to you as well, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, my love.
Amazing, Rafa. Thank you so much for introducing us to Alice and then having her here with us today. So thank you for the intro and for this amazing guest. So Alice, as you know, I am fascinated and very passionate as well about everything related to influencer marketing, talent management, storytelling. I've been running the business for about 6 years now, but I don't know if you know, before I started MG Empower, before I was a talent management agency. That's how we started. So I started representing talents, and then from there, I decided to change the business model to be more of a service agent rather than talent management. And you did the opposite, right? So you were doing like brand service, and then you now have your own agency that's based on representation. So first, I would love you to give a little intro about yourself to our audience, and then start with that question, like, what was the transition between being, you know, a brand, you know, builder and working direct with brands, and like Rafa mentioned Estée Lauder, sorry, Shiseido or Estée Lauder, correct me? Both,
For
all
sure.
right, I got it right. And when you decided to you know, to move to that direction of being a talent management.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, I love that you and I have had a very similar path. I just swapped, I guess. But no, I guess, I mean, I started my career in public relations. So for 20 plus years, I was on the brand side and really, you know, doing the PR global communication strategies for brands, primarily in the beauty space. So I was with Estée Lauder for 7 years, Tom Ford, Clinique. My last role, as Raph mentioned, was vice president of Shiseido makeup and also Bare Minerals. And, you know, I think it was actually a very natural segue into talent management, because the way I like to explain it in the simplest terms is, back when I was, you know, doing my job for corporate, I was essentially bringing the talent to the brand, but now I'm bringing the brand to the talent. So I think it's a very similar discipline. It is that you're on a different side of the fence. But what I really love about what I'm doing is the insight I had from the brand building side, because, you know, I'll, you know, get on a Zoom with a brand, or we'll sit down and go over their objectives. And then, you know, and especially with brands that are very much in their infancy in the influencer marketing world, who maybe they're a little shy or timid to go to work with TikTok or whatever it might be, I can really empathize with them. And I can, because I've been there, I worked on the brand side when there's been so much change in marketing and, you know, okay, how do we pivot? How do we be flexible? We've now got to focus on this type of marketing. And so I feel, you know, having that background has actually been an incredible advantage as a talent manager, because at the end of the day, you know, we just want it to be a win-win for the talent and also the brand, right? Whatever the objective is, whether it's sales, whether it's awareness, whether it's conversion. So I love that you had a very similar path to me, and we flipped, but I do think the disciplines are quite similar, and I think they actually complement each other.
No, absolutely. And then I love the story, because for me, the insight was very the same, but the opposite. So when I was working with as a talent manager, and I was talking with brands to actually, you know, sell the clients the talents, right? Or engaging the brands to collaborate with the talent I was representing. And I'm talking about 7 years ago. So there was this still like brands was trying to understand the value of actually collaborating with an influencer. And then they were asking me like, but why I should actually engage with a talent? What is actually the ROI of this investment will look like? And why there would be a great window for my brand. So there was still a lot of like mysteries around like why to collaborate with the influencer and what's the value and impact they will bring to the brand. So after doing that for 3 years, I understood that there was a gap in the market of branding. Brands wanted to understand more on a strategically way of like how to actually engage with talent and what that data analytic will look like. So then I flipped, because I got all the insights from the talents, because exactly to what you said, it's a win-to-win collaboration, right? And when you have the insights from both sides, it's at least from my experience, it makes easier for you to actually create a strategy that is going to resonate and add value for both sides. So we pretty much pivot, but to a different direction. But in essence, we are doing contributing for both, right? For brands and talents.
I mean, at the end of the day, if the brand is not succeeding, then, you know, it goes par and par with the talent. Like, it has to be a win-win. But, you know, that's a very real concern. And, you know, I remember when I moved to the States, it's almost 10 years ago now, it was really the beginning of that influencer marketing was starting to really bubble up, right? And become, you know, something that brands had to listen to. Because if you think about it, how traditional marketing used to be, it was very much a one-way dialogue. You know, the brand would set the tone, they'd set the image, they'd do the advertising campaign, they'd, you know, shoot the look, whatever it is. They'd then get a double-page spread in Vogue and advertise it, or a billboard on Sunset. And it would be a one-way message of what the brand said the brand was that they're sharing with the consumer. Now you're having consumers tell the brand what the brand is, right? So if you have to bring people along on that journey, but that I remember it was a very nervous time for brands to be like, wait, we're letting go of our brand equity and we're letting these influencers who, we don't know the ROI, we don't know the data, we don't know the conversion, we don't know if this is going to work. It was a very scary time, but I think obviously now things have changed. And, I think if you're not doing influencer marketing, you really should probably consider it. Because it clearly does work and it really is the future. But I remember those times of that traditional marketing changing to kind of online, and how nervous brands were.
For sure. And now when you look at the brands that you're working with and the beautiful, fantastic talents that you're working with, how do you think that we can really use that collaboration to really make sure that the talent can be the voice of the consumer and can be heard in the decision in the marketing? Like you said, it's not just kind of the brand deciding how they show up in the world. It's through the voice of really influential talent, but also through the voice of real people. So how do you think kind of those talent can be really heard in the decision-making process as part of a marketing campaign and not just kind of an extension of a plan?
Right. That's a great question. So I think, first and foremost, I think if you're a brand and you're wanting to start working with influencers or talent, I always say, imagine your brand or your product or your service was, a person, and personify it. Who would that be? Is it a makeup brand that's very, buxom or whatever, and so you want someone like a Khloe Kardashian, female empowerment? Is it an athletic brand that you need someone who lives, breathes, has a health conscious, 24/7 lifestyle? Then who would that be? But so I think number one, when you're a brand that you're wanting to partner with talent, make sure that the talent align with your brand values. It's critical and key, or else it's just not going to hit, right? Consumers are too savvy and they're going to see right through that. But I think the second part of your question, Raph, bringing consumers in on the journey, I always refer back to Jen Atkin, right? I think she's brilliant at how she did this with her hair company Way, which, recently then, part of it sold to P&G. When she was building this brand, she had a huge social presence online, and she brought her followers along in the decision-making process. So she'd be on her stories, hey guys, do you like this kind of body wash, or do you want more of a scrub? Do you like this fragrance, or do you like this scent? Whatever it was. And she had that dialogue with her followers, because at the end of the day, if your followers and your fans and the consumers are the ones buying it, it makes sense for them to have a say in how the product should be developed.
I love this case study. Rafa, again, we're thinking and telling the same. Me and Rafa, we have this connection. I love this example, and I'm a big fan of like how she used her voice to build this brand that it's a global brand now, and she's still working very close with her community to get to the next step of her brand, right? So it's fascinating what she has been done. And as we mentioned about an influencer, a talent, like a celebrity creating a brand, how do you see this universe now that the creative economy has transformed the way brands engaging with influencers, but also it's transforming how influencers are now having much more opportunity to monetize through creation of their own brand or co-creating products with brands. So tell me a little bit more about that based on the talent that you represented, and how do you see this co-creation element between brands and influence? Because on my perspective, this is something that is just starting, that's more and more, especially on the Web 3.0. It's going to be a win-to-win collaboration more than ever. So brands will need talents to create content and vice versa, but also using influence, not using, but collaborating with the influencers and talents to co-create, products and brands. Would love to get your thoughts on that.
So I think that's really interesting question, because I think traditionally, like whenever we, back in the day, we would sign Nicole Kidman to Chanel No. 5 fragrance, put a billboard up and do a TVC, run some double page spreads in Vogue and Harper's. And she would be the face of the brand and beautiful and incredible. And that was great. Now, I think the difference with influencer marketing is not only are you signing this talent, right? This person who personifies your brand or is the best brand representative, and they are starring in, producing, directing, creating all of the content. The second thing I think brands need to realize and remember is that aside, they're also bringing to you a very engaged and sticky audience. So they are their own media channel. Okay, they might have 5, 10, 20 million followers. So they also, think of it that it's so multi-layered, the number of things that the talent is doing for a brand. So if you want to then do a brand collab, look at the talent who've also built a huge following. Okay, there's a lot of work that goes into that. I love the saying, it took 7 years to become an overnight success, right? You don't see the work that goes on behind the scenes, doing all the organic content, building, slogging away, keep going. Then one day the tipping point hits, and then people become a public name or something. But it's not just, I think the thing that brands forget is, it's just signing some TikTok star or influencer to this campaign, and it's back like when we signed X model back in the day or X actress back in the day. No, they are actually bringing with you a very dedicated following who they have built that community. So you've already got access to that. Then of course, if you use paid media, whitelisting, amplify, push out the assets in other ways, then of course you can reach an even bigger audience. But I think that's a very key part. Listen, these people know how to build their channel. They know how to talk to their fans. They know how to keep their fans engaged. So I think that's the difference that we're seeing today.
No, for sure. And I think it's even like then when you manage to successfully kind of establish that relationship between those talents who are the content creator, who are the media in on themselves. And now you see a lot of them kind of go into creating their brands in partnership with large companies. And it's you have to kind of establish that meaningful relationship to be able to get into that level of partnership. And we see some that are super successful, and we see some where people kind of like maybe challenging a little bit the authenticity behind it. When you're working with your team, like how do you make sure that you kind of establish the right meaningful kind of level of partnership with companies so that you can really build that in a way that's super authentic to your talent? It's always a challenge. Everyone wants to be authentic, but how do you, like, you're like day in day out, you're working with your talent to make sure that everything that they do helps further the career, but do that in a very authentic way? How do you approach that?
Do you know what I think? And this probably seems strange, but I think you have to be comfortable with saying no. Like you might get thrown a lot of money to do X, Y, Z. And it's always my girl, I call them my girls just because it is just girls at this stage, but it's always their decision. But for me, if it's off brand and it's just a money grab, it's not worth it. It's just not worth a long-term brand building strategy. So yes, authenticity is everything. Transparency is everything. If it doesn't fit within the talent's brand pillars, because they're a brand, just like the brand's a brand, the talent is a brand. It has to be, I feel like authenticity or being authentic is the, most overused word, but it really is true. Because you just don't want, a quick win now to be detrimental down the track for whatever reason. And also there's things like cancel culture and, that's so prevalent, and that's a huge concern for talent these days. And, thankfully my girls are all really good and quite safe and are very brand safe, I should say. But yeah, I think it comes back to transparency and authenticity.
It's what you said, that you pick and choose the brands now, like that, that this makes more relevant for your talents to work. And back on time, if you go like 7 years ago, was all about quantity, right? So talents and influencers, they were doing a paid post. Every post was a paid post. And then I remember would be like an influencer that she would do a paid post of a beauty brand on a Monday, a different beauty brand on a Tuesday, and a different one on Wednesday. And then I think is when things start shifting, because, consumers, as you said, they're very savvy nowadays, right? And at the beginning of the influencer, when the influencer, is starting booming across social channels, even us as a consumer, we're just quite understand like why this, influencer are selling these brands to us, why they're promoting so many brands. But as we evolve as a consumer of social platforms, we also understood that, okay, but is that actually being authentic? Is actually is being a relatable content to me? And I think is when now we see influencers making more of like a decisions, because they understood exactly to what you said, that they are brands as well. They're not just, a window of advertising. And I think that is the beauty of the world of influencer marketing nowadays, because influencers are brands, as brands are brands, right? So it's not, and I think that is that authenticity and be, relatable and to your point. So influencers, they know their audience, and their audience are more savvy. So it's so important nowadays that brands understand that, and making sure there is a brand fit, and that influencers' talents are aligned with brand purpose, and vice versa, right?
Right. And actually, it's something you just reminded me of. I think the other part, though, is, I mean, back in the day when, I started working with this wonderful girl, Kat Sickler. So she's one of my big TikTok stars. And, back in the day, we started working together over 2 years ago. And, she had a much, much smaller, she really was just kind of starting. And I remember saying to her, you have to be okay with me saying no. And at that time, it's like, oh, but, I'm a mom, and I've got, it's like, could pay my rent this month, and it's like, I get it, but just trust me. You just have to, when you're building a brand, it's really is a lot about what you say no to that really helps with success. So that's one thing. But I think the other thing you just reminded me when you were chatting is, one thing I would love to see in the industry happen a lot more is more education and awareness from a consumer standpoint, that content creators, digital content creators, they actually do need to do paid partnerships in order to be able to provide you with content. I find it, I don't want to say amusing, but like kind of, it's kind of astonishing how many times you see, whether it's my girls or someone else's, another talent, I know people will comment, oh, another ad. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, is this person just meant to get up every day and create content for you to entertain you and not pay their rent this month? I mean, it's interesting. I'm like, you watch the Super Bowl and you're quite okay to watch the ads, right? How do you think, at the end of the day, I think we've got to change our mindset about the creator economy, and how these digital content creators do make a living, right? They are entitled to earn a living just as much as anyone else.
No, I totally agree with you. And also getting the consumers to educate that the content that they are creating, they're adding value to the community, right? Because at the moment that are picking, choosing brands that they believe that makes sense for them to work with, is because they wanted to add value to their community. They wanted to, to be authentic, but also getting their community to be related to that content they share, that being educational content or a product-led content. It's just more to consumers, to your point, is like, it's not just I'm doing this because I've been paid, but I'm creating content that is a benefit to my community as well, right?
Right.
And one of the things that we've done in the last year, we've done quite a bit of workshop for developing new brands, where we actually invite influencers to be part of the conversation and be not just the face of the brand. Here's the product, buy it, but be part of the conversation behind the scenes to help shape the brand, a brand that they will feel proud and excited about representing. Because I feel like they, like you said, they have access to such an engaged community. They know what's going to make them happy, what's going to be helpful, what they're missing, what question they're asking in the comment, but also in the DM, because sometimes we're not always comfortable asking all this question publicly, but they have access to all that, and being able to include them in that conversation up front. We've seen so much success in kind of being able to then kind of engage talent to be associated and supporting a brand in a much more authentic way, and brand that they genuinely feel a sense of like, oh, I was part of creating that. with
That's
your
great.
work with brands. Yeah, no, it's been a really fun process, to be honest. But with your process working with brands and kind of talents, what are the tips you can give to the marketers out there when you think about how they can kind of more integrate more the influencer as part of the process, or make sure we really establish that meaningful relationship between the brand and the talent, because you work with so many different brands, and you get a knock at the door, you have to kind of weed out which ones are going to be the most meaningful one and the most authentic one. How do you do that, and what you're looking for in kind of the way brands approach it?
So I think if you're a brand and you're looking to start working with influencers, perhaps, you haven't done it before, or you're testing the water, I think start by seeding, right? Obviously, if it's a product, start by seeding, or if it's a service, let them have a subscription or whatever it might be. And go through your UGC content, right? See who really is an avid lover, authentic user, person, consumer that buys your product or brand or whatever it might be. And start kind of testing the water, and really let the data be your compass. So if you start with a big influencer seeding campaign, maybe a talent will, organically post about it. They might post about it again. They might just say, oh my gosh, this is my favorite thing ever. Like whatever is, then just start to see, was there an uplift in Ulta that night? I know that's certainly happened with talent I've worked with, where they've tested, a brand will test the water. They will do an organic kind of post to kind of see, obviously, if they love it, right? Because the other thing is that a lot of the time, my girls will say, let's send the product to me first. I want to try it for a few weeks or a few months, and then I'll let you know. And then they're like, no, I don't like it. I'm sorry, it doesn't work for my hair. It doesn't work for my skin, whatever it might. And then they say no, because they authentically, they want to make sure that they are espousing what they believe in. But I think if you're a brand, start, do a test and learn. It's very economical to do a seeding program. It's very cost effective. And then start by looking through people's feeds. Do they mention you organically already? Do they really love your product and your brand? And then maybe start working with them. Some of the best brands have started on very robust micro influencer strategies. You don't have to sign Kim Kardashian with, however hundreds of millions of followers to have a successful campaign. In fact, I would say, you really want to hone in on who your customer is, and then who your customer is being influenced by. I think that's really going to kind of, dictate who you should work with. I don't know if I answered that
really
right.
Good advice.
Very, very love that. One thing, Alice, like with your talents, because we're talking a lot about a social content creation, but we're seeing as well here, especially working with the clients of MG Empower, how we are now creating a strategy where we can integrate influencers, not just to create content on social, but using influencers to do creating experience with them that is ROL, and but collaborating with talents on a live streaming element. When we create pop-ups with our clients, how to actually launch pop-up, but bringing the ambassadors and the influencers that are already creating content to the opening of a pop-up and meet and greet community. Do you do that with your talents, and do you see that brands are more open to engage with the influencer on a more integrating way rather than just social?
Well, I've only had my agency for 2 years, and pretty much 90% of that was during COVID. So there was, very limited, pop-ups and consumer events and things like that. But that being said, in the last 6 months, that's completely changed. Like there are so many events, there's so much happening. And I definitely think at the end of the day, it's about relationships, right? Whether it's influencers to influencers, or influencers to consumers, or influencers to brands, so I think the best partnerships that we have are the ones where there really is a personal relationship with the brand, with the influencer. We do get together. You really, when you spend time with someone, you really understand, are they just doing it for that, putting that 60-second video up and then they're just zoned out, or is there a real love for this? And do they go the extra mile? Do they do more when they come to the events? Do they bring ideas to the brands? Do they really want to help co-create and, collaborate? So yeah, I think, I mean, the best ones are always when both sides are really excited to partner together.
And is that all about the long-term partnership as well, right? I'm a truly believer that, long-term relationship is what drives, more authenticity into brands and influencers collaboration, and also creating, the element of educating the community of the influencers about that specifically brand or product. You can do that much more efficient if you do with an influencer in a long term rather than a one-off, because
Right.
there's
Oh,
on our
100%.
perspective. Yeah.
100%. I mean, what do they say? It's, you have to have that helicopter marketing of you seeing it or hearing it 7 times before it actually sinks in. So, that's just psychology 101 with, marketing. So, if you're just like doing a one and done, it's, you might have a little bit of a hit or a little bit of hits to your website or something, but we do much prefer the long-term partnerships. It just makes sense. It's easy. You're also asking the talent to come into the brands world, and the number of decks that I get a day to understand this 100-page brand heritage and history. I'm like, okay, but I've got 99 more others I have to like download and understand what's right. So I think the long-term partnerships are definitely the best, because also their followers go, oh yeah, that makes sense. This is Ellie's favorite brand, or this is Anina's favorite, product, whatever it is. That's just authenticity to me. Yeah.
That's a good point, but you have to educate brands on the long-term relationship importance, because it's still, an element of now and then that brand thinks that one-off collaboration can make the wonders, right? So from like perspective, that's a lot of education is still to be done of like the value and the importance of long-term partnerships.
Taking your time, I think what you said about not just kind of sending the product and expecting the content to come back a few days later, but you have to actually live with the product, experience it, to be able to really talk about it in a way that's respectable. And if you want to be authentic, you need to kind of almost align your process, knowing that, and knowing that yes, there's overnight success, but you can't really model your processes and the way you work and your way you engage with people with expecting that. And so I think this idea of taking your time and doing it in a meaningful way is so important.
I always find it interesting when brands say, okay, I've sent the product, here's the tracking number. Do they like it? And can they post tomorrow? No. Okay. What about you guys get ahead of your marketing plans? And, because they're just not going to just do that because you've got this tight deadline and for whatever reason, it's a last minute thing. It's, if they don't know the product, or if they know it before, then okay, of course, if it's a brand partner, and we understand these things happen, but that's not a win for the brand if talent just turn it around quickly and it's a one and done, and it's just let them really love it, let them experience it. I have a celebrity makeup artist, Nikki DeRoost, who she is incredible, that she can go in and talk about she's fantastic in the ingredients and the story and the history and the benefits and the efficacy, and because she takes her job so seriously and she's so good at it. And it astounds me how much knowledge she retains with so many brands. But it's because it's her passion. But give her the time to really try it and see the benefits herself before she starts, talking about it. So that's what I'd also just say.
And I always say to Brandon, let the creator to create the content, because briefings, they are important, but I think more and more brands, we need to understand that if the influencer, the talent, if they create the content through their own eyes and through their own vision, is when we get, the content to be much more authentic and more relatable. Because again, back in the days, I don't know if it was like you, Rafa and Alice, if you experienced that, but when I was doing representation, I used to receive briefings from brands, like telling exactly how the influencer should create the content. So you take the product, you hold the product, and then you smile, and then you're gonna say this. I remember like there was yes.
And also, or the other thing is say they want it in a 45-second TikTok, but then the brief is this long with 20 points. I'm like, how would anyone ever get that out? Like, that's just crazy. But back to the timeline thing. I mean, think about traditional advertising, say at the kind of the tightest kind of marketing turnaround, like for a traditional advertising campaign would be 6 months really from shooting, right? You get the assets, you do post-production, you get approvals, then you do your media buy. It's a 3-month, print window. So then 6 months later, the assets come out, right? So that's a 6-month period. Here we're saying to the talent, okay, you've got 6 hours. Like, and it's like, well, hang on a second. So, I think we've got to have a little bit more understanding on both sides, what's really going to make this a success. And also, really the best partnerships are the ones where the talent has creative freedom. Of course, there's always, there's always going to be brand messaging and things that, they need to get in, which of course everyone understands. But when you come with 20 different bullet points and ingredient names that are this long, that's not what they do. That's not going to help. And that's just going to, people are going to turn off quickly. People's attention spans are much shorter these days. So if you don't get them in those first 5 seconds, they've scrolled to the next one, right? They are the ones in the position of power. They can just quickly scroll up and it's gone. So I think, there has to be a bit more understanding on that side.
And Alice, we could stay here talking forever because it's a subject that I love. But one question that I have here that I think you mentioned about like the value of like consumers understand like, that influencers, they're doing paid because at the end of the day is their work. How about like the paid media rights, right? Because now talents, they have much more understanding about the value that they have for brand as a brand, right? And again, like if you look at the start of influencer marketing, brands will pay for talents based on the content they will create and based on the content they will post on behalf of the brand. But now there is like a lot of like the majority of brands nowadays, they not just collaborate with the talent to actually get the talents to post about the brand, but use their content to boost, amplify with paid. How do you do that with your talents? How is the education for you on like negotiating with brands? Because the value of, using influencer content for media purpose, it's very high, right? So using an image of a talent to a brand to use longer term to amplify their brand, their message. So how do you work that with your talents, and how do you see brands are understanding better that element of the value of the paid rights of the talent?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it makes sense if the talent is spending the time creating the content and posting and, getting that awareness and that messaging out there. In certain instances, it does make sense to then put additional paid media or whitelisting behind it to then support it and push it out to an even bigger audience who, might not be that specific talent's following, but is very much aligned with their consumer set. So that makes sense. But I think, that proponent really comes back to the talent manager or the agent, right? I think, with any contract, I remember when, Kat and I started working together, I said, right, at the very beginning, send me every single contract, because she was managing it, the deals herself with her ex-partner. And I said, right, send me every single contract you've signed, because I want to make sure what you've signed away, like your rights away, because name, image, and likeness, right? You sign that in perpetuity. Okay, that's it. They can use that forever. And that makes me super nervous. So I'm very, very, very diligent on the usage rights. It's like you have to be. Maybe it's a 1-month thing, maybe it's a 3-month thing, whatever it might be. And also exclusivity, right? Category exclusivity. You need to be really across the detail in that, and it's always in that buried right in that second last paragraph, right down the bottom of like a 10-page, contract. But I'm very quick to go to that and make sure that that's aligned with the rate or whatever it is, the agreement that we agreed to, because I have seen talent get absolutely burned when, someone has signed on their behalf, or they might have signed because they were doing it themselves. And then, 5 years later, you're seeing this very, B-grade commercial keep popping up all over the place because now this talent's a huge star. And back in the day when they didn't know or they were just starting, they signed their rights away. And I think here's what's really interesting to me is, back when I was in on the corporate side and, Raph and I were working, we signed Hailey Bieber and Rosie Huntington-Whiteley and huge, global names. The difference with digital influencers, it obviously generally skews a lot younger as an audience set. And, a lot of my girls have the email button goes straight to me. So, every day I get a plethora of, everything from marriage proposals to spam to crazy things that come in. The things I've seen, trust me, it's fascinating. But what I'm so shocked at and kind of disappointed is the number of brands and people who try to take advantage on the fact that they think they're emailing the talent directly and that this talent is young and doesn't know, and probably doesn't have the awareness to understand a contract that is legally binding. And of course, the talent if they say that, back in the day when they're starting, they manage themselves. Of course, they want to be nice to the brand. That brand's paying them their rent this month. So of course they're going to be like, oh, okay. And I've seen so many it's an abuse of power, really. I find it horrible. But so I'm very mama bear about those kind of things and if they want to pay, if they want those extra things, okay, fine. But this is what their rate's going to be. And it's totally your choice. We'll never, question that. But they have to be paid accordingly. If you're then going to be using their name, image, and likeness, or splash it all around the world in every form of billboard, in-store, point of sale, digital, online, traditional media, it's that's definitely, as a talent manager and agent, that's the thing that you want to look out for.
Well, if I ever need a lawyer, I'm definitely calling you. You're definitely on top of all the details. I like it.
It's when I see, I know when you introduce me as a full scale, I mean, really, it is legal. You have to understand legal contracts. And if you don't, then, get inside counsel or have outside counsel that you can refer to, because rule number one, get a good lawyer, right? Get someone who understands that.
Wow. It's such an important subject that we discussed because, I still, again, I feel like there's a need of continuing education on that to brands, right? Because sometimes they think that they can take advantage, but we need to start seeing talents as a brand, and then is their image, right? It's their image rights, and they have the right to charge for that. And we have to be very diligent on influencers contract agreement, but also very diligent on educating brands that, the value and also how to respect the talent's work, right? So you cannot just, but I think it's getting better. But there's from when I started, because I used to be a talent management, and as you said, I used to receive agreements where they would say, oh, we can repurpose your content for 5 years. I was like, what? 5 years, darling? And then you wanted to pay, this amount and use, this talent content for 5 years. So it's very shocking, because sometimes at my time, I used to receive the agreements with that paragraph saying, without even asking on email to me if there was an agreement on that.
It's kind of comical. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but so many brands, oh, sorry, we forgot to remove that part. I'm like, yeah, no, it's really that's, I think that's just, contracts are the things that keep me up the most at night, I think, and it's usually at the end of the day when, the phone calls are stopped and the meetings have stopped. That's when I sit down at night and, really you want to read those things 3 times, because I feel responsible for my girls, right? And if I sign on their behalf, and if I'm signing something on their behalf that then jeopardizes them in some way, then that's on, and that's a responsibility I take very seriously. But yeah, I think it's crazy the amount of things that slip into the contract that, no, we didn't agree on that.
But it's also on us
Interesting
too.
to
Like,
know
I know
that
we
it's
work.
still happening.
We
Sorry,
work a
Rafa.
lot with that's also on us to kind of work with the brand and kind of help them, because a lot of the time it's like we've all been brand side, we're like, oh, it would be great to be able to include this, so it would be nice if we could do that. And it's always fine to ask the question or for the suggestion, but being able to help kind of both sides understand the needs and help navigate that. And we work a lot with our clients to kind of help them understand, oh, I understand why you would want to do that, but it's also not realistic because the talent has X, Y, and Z. They need to be able to do deals with other brands. They're not going to be able to kind of release their image for that long. But I think it's all about communication and education to be able to kind of really get there. But everyone kind of going into it with kind of the most honest, open, like that's what we're looking to achieve. But also being understanding that not everything is possible, right?
And also, I mean, there's, sometimes I'll say to the talent, say, hey, look, this brand wants to whitelist for 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is. And, this is what they're going to pay you for that. And here's the benefit. This is a very premium brand. It's very on brand with you. It's actually going to bring more awareness and more eyeballs to your page, right? Because they're going to be amplifying on the talent's page. So this is actually a win-win, because if anyone's looking at your page and go, oh, that partnership with, this beautiful brand, look how incredible the views were, look how successful it was. So, there is definitely a win-win. It's just more of the times when I see, brands are cheeky and they try to slide in a few more things that, but, thankfully so far I've managed to find them.
Amazing. Alice, to end our conversation, which has been incredible, and then I wish you could have more time, but just, quick question, just like, wanted to hear from you. Aspirational, inspirational content, or both?
I think it depends on the talent, right? If the talent is someone who creates aspirational travel and lifestyle, and then of course that's perfect. If the talent is someone who has been through a hardship and come out the other side and is inspiring, then that's going to work for them. So I think there's a place for both. I don't think one is better than the other. I think it really depends on who the talent is and how it aligns with their brand.
Love that, because there's a lot of conversation around aspirational content versus inspirational, and I could not agree more with you. Alice, what a pleasure to have you today with us at our Influencer Marketing Uncovered podcast. Really, really appreciate and very grateful for your time, and very much looking forward to meet you in person soon when I'm in US, in California.
That's when we'll have the glass of wine.
Exactly. And Rafa, again, thank you so much. It's always amazing to have you as my co-host. And thank you again for, inviting Alice to be part of our episode today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you and get to spend more time with Alice, who I miss dearly.
No, I love you, Raph. Thank you both for having me. It was truly an honor to be on your podcast, and looking forward to getting together in person soon. Well, thank you both. Really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Alice. And thank you so much to everyone that has been listening to us today at our Influencer Marketing Uncovered podcast. Hope you have enjoyed our conversation. And if you're not following us yet, please do so. We are on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to one more episode of Influencer Marketing Uncovered podcast. See you on our next episode. Thank you so much.